The twin suns of Velora burned above a land of red dust and endless cliffs. Wind howled through the canyons, carrying the smell of iron and the faint echo of screams. Ethan Cole adjusted the cracked visor on his helmet as he walked along the rocky ridge. His small ship had crashed 2 days ago. His oxygen levels were dropping and the radio was silent. He was alone, or so he thought. A sharp cry cut through the wind. It wasn't human. It was high-pitched, trembling, and full of pain. Ethan froze, his boots sliding on loose stones. He turned toward the echo, heart pounding. The sound came again, closer this time. He climbed to the cliff's edge and looked down. What he saw made his blood run cold. Far below, a group of tall alien figures stood in a half-circle. Their armor gleamed silver blue under the twin suns. In the center was a small figure, barefoot, wrapped in torn cloth. Her pale skin shimmered faintly like starlight, and her hair glowed white against the dust. She looked young, no more than 14 in human years. The tallest alien raised his hand. "By the law of the House of Velora," he shouted, "the younger must fall, so the elder may rule." Before Ethan could even understand, they pushed her off the cliff. The girl screamed as she fell, arms flailing. A flash of white against the red rocks. Ethan didn't think. He jumped. The wind tore at his face as he dove. His jetpack sputtered. It was damaged from the crash, but it fired just enough thrust to slow his fall. He caught the girl mid-air, wrapping one arm around her waist, using the other to control the descent. The jetpack burned out completely a moment later, and they hit the sand hard. Ethan gasped, pain shooting up his leg. The girl lay still beside him, her eyes wide with shock. For a second, neither spoke. Then she whispered in a shaking voice, Why did you save me?" Ethan pushed himself up, coughing. "Because no one deserves to die like that." She looked at him. Truly looked at him. Her pupils were vertical, her eyes glowing faint silver. "You're human," she said softly, as if she didn't believe what she was seeing. "Yeah," Ethan said, pulling off his cracked helmet. "And you're lucky I was close." Above them, the figures at the cliff's edge shouted in anger. Ethan could hear their metallic voices echoing through the canyon. "The younger lives." "The law has been broken." The girl's body trembled. "They'll come for us," she said. "My sister will come," Ethan frowned. "Your sister? One of them?" She nodded weakly. "Elleris, the elder. She is bound by law to own everything our family leaves behind. Even me." Ethan couldn't understand such cruelty.
"Own you?"
"What kind of law is that?" "The law of blood," she said, voice trembling. "When the parents die, everything passes to the elder sister. The younger must fall to prove the elder's right to rule. It has been this way for generations." Ethan clenched his jaw. "That's not law," he said bitterly. "That's murder." The girl looked down, silent tears running across her glowing skin. "My name is Lyra," she whispered. "You shouldn't have saved me. Now they'll hunt you too." Ethan glanced around the canyon. His ship's wreckage was miles away. He had few supplies, no weapon except a damaged pulse knife. But he saw the fear in her eyes and something inside him hardened. "I've been hunted before," he said quietly. "Come on, we need to move." They climbed through narrow stone passages until they found a cave deep under the cliff. Ethan checked his wrist monitor. Oxygen low, power lower. He handed Lyra a small canister of water. She took it hesitantly, then smiled faintly. "Humans share," she said softly, as if it was strange to her. Ethan managed a weak grin. "Yeah, usually. Outside thunder rolled, not from the sky but from engines. Alien dropships. Searchlights cut through the dust." Lyra shivered. "They'll bring her," she said. "My sister. She's strong and cruel, but she wasn't always like that." Ethan crouched near the cave entrance, watching the distant lights. "Then maybe there's still hope." Lyra looked at him sadly. "You don't understand. Here everything belongs to the elder sister, our home, our blood, even those who touch us. If she finds you, she'll claim you too." Ethan looked back at her, confused but calm. "Let her try." Lyra's eyes widened. "You can't fight her. The royal enforcers obey the law. Even if she kills you, no one will question it." Ethan smiled faintly, the kind that carried both defiance and tired courage. "Then we'll just have to make our own law." The girl blinked, unsure if he was mad or brave or both. A blast of wind blew through the canyon. Distant roars echoed from above. The dropships were landing. Lyra's glowing hand gripped Ethan's arm. "It's too late. She's here." From far across the red plain, a voice thundered through the storm. cold, commanding, full of power. Lyra of Valora, you dare survive what fate has chosen? Ethan turned, seeing a silhouette descending through the dust. Tall, armored, and radiant, the elder sister, Alaris, stepping down like a queen from the sky, her eyes locked on Ethan. For one breath, time froze between them, human and alien, defiance and law, then her voice cut through the wind. You touched what belongs to me, human. By Valoran decree, you are now mine. The night sky above Valora glowed in twin shades of violet and gold. Searchlights moved across the cliffs like blades, cutting through the dark mist. Ethan and Lyra crouched in silence inside the cave, their breathing shallow. But it was no use. The alien enforcers had already surrounded them. Heavy footsteps echoed closer, a rhythmic sound of metal against stone. The ground trembled as a royal hovercraft stopped outside. Ethan gripped his broken pulse knife. Lyra clutched his arm. Her glowing eyes were wide with terror. She's here, Lyra whispered. Alaris. The sound of mechanical locks clicked open, and then she appeared, the elder sister. Alaris stepped into the cave like a storm wrapped in silver. Her armor shimmered under its own light, marked with royal symbols. Her face was beautiful but cold, her expression carved from ice. Her eyes glowed brighter than Lyra's, sharp, commanding, unyielding. Ethan rose to his feet, standing between the two sisters. Stay behind me, he said quietly. Alaris tilted her head, studying him. A human, she said, her voice smooth yet dangerous. How curious. You fall from the sky and the first thing you do is break our sacred law. I saved her life, Ethan replied firmly. Your law tried to kill her. Alaris's lips curved in a faint, humorless smile. The younger must fall. The elder must rise. That is how balance is kept. Balance? Ethan stepped forward, anger in his voice. You call this balance, throwing your own sister off a cliff? The soldiers behind her raised their weapons, but she lifted her hand, stopping them. Her eyes didn't leave his. You speak like one who doesn't understand our world. You are not a Valora. You are not bound by our pain. Maybe not, Ethan said, voice low. But I know right from wrong. Silence filled the cave. The air felt heavy, like the moment before lightning strikes. Then Alaris spoke again, her tone like a blade. By the law of blood, all that touches the younger belongs to the elder. You saved my sister's life. You touched her. That means you belong to me, Lyra gasped. No, Alaris, please. But Alaris didn't look at her. Her gaze stayed fixed on Ethan, steady, unreadable. Take him, she ordered. Two armored guards stepped forward. Ethan tried to resist, but his strength was gone. A rifle's shock pulse hit him in the back, sending pain through his body. Darkness filled his vision as he fell to his knees. The last thing he saw before passing out was Lyra screaming his name, her glowing hands reaching for him as soldiers dragged her away. When Ethan woke, he was lying on a soft metallic floor. Strange patterns glowed under him, the royal emblem of House Valora. He blinked, dazed. His arms were locked in glowing cuffs that pulsed with energy. The air smelled of incense and burning crystal. Around him stood towering pillars and floating lights, a palace of alien design, both beautiful and cold. You are awake, a voice said. Ethan turned. Alaris stood by a window overlooking the city. Below them stretched endless towers of light and silver bridges. It was breathtaking, yet every beam of light seemed controlled, perfect, lifeless. What do you want from me? He asked. Alaris walked closer, her long silver cape flowing behind her. You broke a royal law, she said calmly. According to tradition, I could have you executed. Then why haven't you? She stopped just a few feet away, her eyes meeting his. Because you risked your life for my sister, she said softly. You acted without fear. No one in this world would do that, and not even I. Ethan frowned. So what now? You keep me as your prisoner. Her expression didn't change. Not prisoner, she said. Servant. You will work in my court. You will obey me, and in return I will let you live. Ethan laughed bitterly. That's your mercy? Her voice turned colder. You should be grateful, human. Many would beg for that chance. He met her gaze. I don't beg. For the first time, her perfect calm cracked. Something flickered in her eyes, anger or perhaps curiosity. She turned away. You'll learn. They all do. She walked to the doorway, then paused. The law of blood is unbroken, human. Remember that. And then she was gone. Days passed inside the royal palace. Ethan was kept under watch, assigned meaningless tasks, carrying data scrolls, translating human archives, cleaning royal chambers. The guards mocked him, calling him property of the High Sister. But at night, when the palace grew quiet, a small shadow would sneak through the corridors. Lyra. She brought him food, whispered updates about the outside world. "They say you angered the council," she said one night, her voice trembling. "They fear you will make her question the law." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe she should." Lyra looked down. "You don't understand. She wasn't always like this. When our parents died, she was kind. She protected me. But the elders forced her to follow the old ways. If she didn't obey, she would lose everything." Ethan's face softened. "So she became what they wanted her to be." Lyra nodded, tears shining in her silver eyes. "She hides behind the law because she's afraid to break it." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we'll break it for her." A sudden sound echoed through the hall, boots approaching fast. Lyra gasped and vanished through the shadows. The door opened and Alaris entered. Her expression was unreadable. "You're awake late," she said quietly. "Planning something?" Ethan looked at her calmly. "Just wondering when your world forgot how to feel." She stared at him, silent, eyes burning with something unspoken. Then, very softly, she said, "Maybe it was the day we made laws stronger than love." She turned away before he could answer, her cape sweeping across the floor as she left him in silence. Outside the palace, thunder rolled. Somewhere deep inside her heart, something fragile began to crack, though she would never admit it. The palace of Vylora was a world of order. Every sound, every breath, every step was measured. Even the wind that entered through the tall glass arches seemed afraid to move without permission. Ethan Cole stood among alien nobles, their glowing robes whispering as they passed. He was no longer chained, but he was not free. A small mark on his wrist, burned by Alaris's command seal, reminded everyone that he now belonged to the High Sister. He hated that word, belonged. Each morning he was made to follow Alaris through the royal court, carrying tablets, recording her orders, and standing quietly behind her during meetings. The other courtiers whispered when he passed. Some looked at him with disgust, others with fear, as if his very presence could break their sacred rules. Still, Ethan learned. He watched. He listened. Beneath the glowing marble and silver, the palace was full of secrets. One afternoon, during a council gathering, Alaris stood before the great chamber, a vast hall surrounded by columns of light. The elders floated above the ground, their robes shimmering like smoke. "The law of blood is eternal," one of them said. "No change will be tolerated." Alaris bowed slightly, her voice calm. "And yet the people question it. They whisper in the streets that the old ways bring pain, not order." "Pain brings obedience," the elder replied, "and obedience brings peace." Ethan clenched his jaw from where he stood behind her. The words burned in his chest, but Alaris didn't argue further. Her eyes flicked briefly toward Ethan as if to warn him not to speak. She bowed again, hiding whatever she felt behind her perfect expression. When the meeting ended, Ethan followed her down the long corridor. The silence between them felt heavier than armor. Finally, he said quietly, "You don't believe what they said, do you?" Alaris didn't stop walking. "Belief is a luxury, human. I follow the law to protect what remains of my family." He stepped closer. "Your family?" "The same law tried to kill your sister." She stopped then, turning slowly. Her eyes glowed with restrained fire. "Do not speak of things you do not understand." Ethan met her gaze without fear. "Then explain it to me." For a moment she almost did. He saw it in the way her lips parted, in the flicker of pain in her eyes. But she turned away instead. "You are a servant, not a philosopher. Remember your place," he smiled faintly. "I don't remember agreeing to have one," she didn't reply. But as she walked away, he saw her fingers tremble. That night the palace slept. The twin moons hung low, bathing the city in pale light. Ethan couldn't sleep. He wandered the empty corridors past ancient murals showing the long history of Vylora. Wars, bloodlines, sacrifices. One wall showed two sisters, one kneeling, one standing over her with a crown. The older held a blade. The younger offered her heart. The caption read, "Balance through surrender." Ethan felt sick. "Balance through control," he muttered. He turned to leave, but a quiet voice came from the shadows. "You shouldn't be here." Lyra stepped forward, dressed in a simple cloak, her eyes glowing dimly in the moonlight. Neither should you, Ethan said softly. If they catch you here. I wanted to see you, she interrupted. You look tired, Ethan gave a small laugh. I've had better vacations. She smiled for a second, then grew serious. You must be careful. There are those who want you gone. You're making her different, he frowned. Different how? Since you came, she hesitates. She questions orders. She even stopped an execution yesterday. The council thinks you're corrupting her. Ethan stared toward the tower where Alaris's chamber light still burned. Maybe she's finally remembering she has a heart. Lyra stepped closer. She won't admit it, but you matter to her. You remind her of what she lost when she became High Sister. What was that? Choice, Lyra whispered. She never got to choose who to be. Before Ethan could reply, a loud metallic echo shook the floor. Alarms rang. Red light filled the corridor. Lyra gasped. They found me! Guards rushed from both sides. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand and ran. They ducked through narrow passages, their footsteps echoing against crystal walls. They reached a service lift, but before the doors closed, a blast of energy struck the wall beside them. Alaris stood there, armor half donned, eyes blazing. Lyra! She shouted. What have you done? Lyra's voice broke. I only wanted to see him. Alaris raised her weapon, but Ethan stepped between them. Enough, she's just a child. Move, Alaris commanded. No. For a second, the world held its breath. Alaris's hand trembled. Her weapon lowered slightly. You don't understand, human. If the council sees her here, they'll destroy her and me. Then let's leave, Ethan said. Both of you. Her eyes widened, shock flickering across her face. Leave Velora? You're mad, maybe, Ethan said. But I'd rather be mad than live in chains. The silence stretched between them, thick with tension and something unspoken. Finally, Alaris stepped forward. She looked at her sister, then at Ethan. Go, she said softly. Take her. I will delay the guards. Lyra stared in disbelief. Sister, Alaris's voice hardened. Go before I change my mind. Ethan nodded, pulling Lyra into the lift. As the doors closed, their eyes met one last time. For the first time, Alaris didn't look like a queen. She looked like a woman trapped inside her own crown. The lift descended deep beneath the palace into old tunnels that smelled of dust and oil. Lyra was silent, tears running down her face. She saved us, she whispered. Ethan stared at the flickering control panel. Yeah, he said quietly. But she just made herself a target. Above them, alarms still blared. The law of blood had been defied again, and this time, by the one sworn to uphold it, somewhere far above. Alaris stood before her council's wrath, her voice calm even as her fate began to unravel. The tunnels beneath the Valoran palace were older than memory. The air was thick with dust and quiet sorrow. Symbols were carved into the stone, ancient marks glowing faintly blue like old wounds that never healed. Ethan moved carefully, his flashlight sweeping across walls painted with long-forgotten stories. Beside him, Lyra walked in silence. The hum of distant machinery echoed faintly above, the palace alive with chaos. Your sister's buying us time, Ethan said quietly. Lyra nodded, wiping her tears. Alaris has always protected me, even when she couldn't show it. The law forced her to be cold. Ethan's voice softened. She risked everything tonight. That's not cold. They followed a narrow passage that opened into a vast underground hall. It looked like a library, but the shelves weren't made of wood. They were solid metal filled with glowing crystal slabs. Each slab pulsed faintly, humming with stored memory. Lyra stepped forward. The old archive, she whispered. Our ancestors hid truths here that the council forbade. Ethan's eyes widened. Truths about what? The law, she said.
How it began. They activated one of the slabs.
A holographic figure flickered to life, an old alien scholar with weary eyes. His voice was faint, echoing through the empty chamber. To control the people of Velora, Emperor Sarun divided the bloodlines. He gave the elder sisters ownership, and bound the younger by ritual sacrifice. It was not tradition, it was obedience disguised as faith. Ethan's jaw tightened. So it was never a sacred law. It was created to make sure no one questioned authority. Lyra nodded slowly, her face pale. They made us believe cruelty was order. They made us believe love was weakness. Another recording came alive, this one showing images of war, rebellion, and fire. When the first younger sister refused to fall, the elders burned her name from history. But her sacrifice planted a seed of defiance. One day that seed will rise again. Ethan turned off the device. The hall was silent except for their breathing. "This," he said, "this could destroy the council if people saw it." Lyra looked at him. "No one dares speak against the law, not even my sister." "Maybe she would now," Ethan said. "She just risked her life to save us." Lyra hesitated. "If we show her this, she'll have to choose between the truth and her throne." Ethan looked up toward the ceiling where faint vibrations from above trembled through the rock. "Then we better hurry. She's running out of time." Meanwhile, in the palace above, Ilaris stood before the Grand Council. The chamber burned with white light. 10 elders floated in a circle around her, their faces hidden behind silver masks. "You defied sacred law," one said. "You allowed the younger to live." "She is my sister," Ilaris replied calmly. "I will not kill blood for the sake of tradition." "Tradition is survival," another hissed. "Without obedience, the houses will fall into chaos." Ilaris lifted her chin. "Then perhaps they should fall." Gasps rippled through the chamber. "Your heart has been corrupted by the human," one elder thundered. "His defiance infects you." Ilaris's voice remained steady, but her pulse raced. "Maybe it's not defiance," she said. "Maybe it's clarity." The council rose in anger. "You dare!" But before they could finish, a guard entered, breathless. "Hi, sister!" "The human and the younger, they've entered the old archive." Ilaris's blood ran cold. She turned sharply. "Seal the palace," she ordered. "No one else enters those tunnels." She didn't wait for permission. She walked out, her cape swirling behind her, hiding the fear that bloomed inside her chest. Back in the tunnels, Ethan and Lyra loaded the recordings into a small data core from his crashed ship. "This contains proof," Ethan said. "If we can transmit it to the outer colonies, people will know the truth." Lyra frowned. "But the palace is blocking all signals. Only the High Sister's command key can open the channel." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then we need your sister." Lyra hesitated. "You really think she'll help us?" He looked at her firmly. "She already has." A distant rumble shook the walls. Dust rained from above. Lyra looked up, frightened. "They're coming." Ethan took her hand. "Then we meet them halfway." They ran through narrow tunnels, turning corners until they reached an old gate glowing with energy symbols. Ethan pressed his hand against it. The metal burned hot, rejecting him. Suddenly, a shadow stepped out from the smoke. Ilaris. Her armor was scratched, her eyes fierce. She looked at them. At Ethan first, then Lyra. "You shouldn't have come here," she said quietly. Lyra stepped forward. "We found the truth, Ilaris. The law isn't divine. It's a lie." Ilaris's gaze flickered toward the glowing crystals. "I know," she whispered. Ethan froze. "You knew?" Her voice cracked for the first time. "My father told me before he died. But the council forced me to continue the law. They said if I questioned it, our house would burn." Lyra's tears fell. "So you let our people suffer?" Ilaris's face twisted in pain. "I tried to protect you. I thought I could change things from within. But every time I disobeyed, they threatened you." Ethan stepped closer. "You can still change it. This archive has everything you need to end it." Ilaris shook her head. "If I go against them openly, the council will destroy me. And both of you." Ethan looked into her eyes. "Then maybe it's time the galaxy sees who they really are." For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, full of choices and fear. Then Ilaris reached for the data core and placed her palm over it. Her command seal glowed bright red, unlocking the palace signal grid. She looked at Ethan and Lyra. "Once this truth leaves Valora, there is no turning back." Ethan nodded. Truth never needs to turn back. She pressed her hand firmly, and the data streamed upward through the rock, into the sky, spreading across the network like wildfire. The elders felt it instantly. Warnings flashed in the council chamber. The truth, hidden for centuries, was now free. Ilaris closed her eyes as the ground trembled. "They will come for us now," she said. Ethan grinned faintly. "Then we give them a reason to remember why they fear humans." Above the planet, the royal signal towers blazed with light, broadcasting the forbidden history to every home, every world, every colony. And as the people of Valora saw the truth, the first cracks began to form in the empire built on obedience. The sky of Violora burned. Every tower in the capital flashed crimson as the truth spread like wildfire through the planetary network. The people watched in silence as history itself collapsed, the law of blood exposed as nothing more than control, not destiny. Ethan, Ilaris, and Lyra stood at the mouth of the ancient tunnel, dust swirling around them. In the distance, alarms blared. Ilaris's voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed fear. They will come for us now. The council will not forgive this. Ethan looked toward the glowing city. Good, he said. Let them come. They've ruled through fear for centuries. Maybe it's time fear worked both ways. Lyra stared at the horizon, trembling. They'll take me first, she whispered. They'll make an example of me. Ilaris touched her sister's shoulder gently. Not while I breathe. But before she could say more, a sharp beam of blue light cut through the ground beside them. Explosions roared. The force knocked Ethan back and smoke filled the air. When he opened his eyes, Lyra was gone. Lyra, he shouted, stumbling to his feet. Ilaris's face went pale. They've taken her. Hovercrafts rose into the sky, council enforcers. Their symbols glowed white, the mark of holy authority. Ilaris clenched her fists. They'll take her to the Citadel. They want the younger alive for public punishment. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then we get her back. You don't understand, Ilaris said. The Citadel is guarded by the Grand Protectors. Even I can't enter without permission. Then we stop asking for permission, Ethan said coldly. You're a queen, Ilaris, and start acting like one. Her breath caught at his tone. No one had ever spoken to her like that. But instead of anger, something fierce and bright rose within her. Then we go, she said. Hours later, under the cover of the burning night, they stole a council skimmer and raced toward the Citadel. The massive structure loomed above the city like a dark crown, wrapped in blue energy fields and guarded by fleets of drones. Inside the cockpit, Ethan checked the stolen map. There's a maintenance shaft under the eastern wall. Small, but enough for two. Ilaris nodded. We'll take it. I can disable the security grid once we're inside. He glanced at her. You sound confident, she looked straight ahead. I have nothing left to lose. The skimmer descended through the mist, landing silently near the lower wall. The air smelled of ozone and rain. Ethan slipped out first, followed by Ilaris. She moved with the grace of someone trained for war, silent, controlled, deadly. They reached the shaft entrance, hidden behind collapsed machinery. Ilaris placed her palm against the metal. Her royal code flashed red, then green. The hatch opened with a hiss. Inside was darkness, a narrow tunnel humming with old power lines. Stay close, she whispered. They crawled through the tunnel, every sound echoing like thunder. When they reached the inner chamber, they found themselves above a vast hall of glass prisons. Hundreds of captives stared out with glowing eyes, silenced rebels, scholars, and forgotten souls. In the center, chained to a glowing pillar, was Lyra. Lyra, Ilaris gasped. Her sister looked up weakly. They said they would erase my name from every record. I'll never have existed. Ilaris's eyes blazed. Not while I still stand. Before she could move, a voice boomed across the hall. Hi, Sister Ilaris, it thundered. At last you show your true betrayal. From the shadows stepped Grand Elder Vecran, his tall form draped in silver robes, his mask glowing with authority. You dare bring a human into sacred ground? He said. You have polluted our bloodline. Ethan stood firm beside Ilaris. Funny, he said, because your bloodline seems terrified of one human truth. Vecran raised his staff and energy crackled across the floor. You have doomed her, he snarled at Ilaris. You and your broken pet. Bolts of plasma tore through the air. Ethan grabbed Ilaris, pulling her behind a pillar as explosions shattered glass. Prisoners screamed. Ilaris shouted, The locks! Free them! Ethan nodded, dashing through smoke and sparks. He used his pulse knife to cut into the control panel. The circuit screamed, sparks flying, but one by one the prison lights went dark. The captives broke free. Chaos erupted. Ilaris charged toward Vecran, her blade humming with blue light. Their weapons clashed, sending shockwaves through the chamber. For every sister you buried, she shouted. Vecran sneered. You are nothing without the law. Ilaris struck again, her eyes blazing. Then let the law die with you! Ethan reached Lyra and broke her chains. She collapsed into his arms. You came back, she whispered. Always, he said. But when he turned, he saw Elaris falter. Vecron's staff struck her shoulder, sending her crashing to the floor. Ethan's blood froze. He lunged forward, blocking the next strike with his arm. The weapon seared his flesh, but he held firm. With his other hand, he drove the pulse knife into the elder's chest. The hall went silent. Vecron staggered, eyes wide, and fell. Elaris struggled to stand, blood glimmering on her armor. Ethan helped her up. You're bleeding. So are you, she said, managing a weak smile. Around them, the freed prisoners knelt, chanting her name. Elaris of Valora, the breaker of chains. She looked at them, her voice trembling. No more sisters shall fall. No more children shall be owned. Lyra stood beside her, holding her hand. Together, Elaris looked at both of them. The sister she saved and the human who had saved them both. Together, she said. Outside, the citadel burned. The people rose, inspired by what they had seen. The old law was dying. The galaxy was watching. But Ethan knew this wasn't over. The council had many worlds, many armies. They would not surrender easily. As they stood on the tower's edge, wind whipping through their hair, Elaris whispered, "The war begins now." Ethan nodded. Then let's make it a war worth remembering. The dawn over Valora came blood red. Smoke rose from the citadel, painting the horizon in streaks of ash and light. The once silent city now echoed with the voices of thousands. Voices that no longer whispered in fear, but shouted in defiance. For the first time in centuries, the people of Valora disobeyed. Elaris stood on the balcony of the broken tower, her armor scorched, her cape torn. Around her, rebel banners fluttered, carrying the symbol she once wore as a crown, now inverted, the mark of freedom. Ethan stood beside her, bandaged arm resting against the railing. His eyes scanned the sky. "They'll strike back soon," he said quietly. "The High Council won't go down without burning everything first." Elaris nodded. "They'll come with fleets. They always do." Lyra approached, her pale face framed by the rising light. "The people are ready," she said softly. "They call you the breaker of chains now." Elaris looked at the city below. Millions gathering, chanting her name, believing in her. But her heart was heavy. "I didn't break the chains," she murmured. "I only showed them they were real." Ethan looked at her. "That's all revolutions ever need. Someone to make people see." Their eyes met briefly. Something unspoken passed between them. Respect, pain, and something deeper neither dared name. A sudden tremor shook the ground. Sirens blared. "They're here," Ethan said. Above the city, massive warships tore through the clouds, black, silent, and merciless. The Council's armada. The first blasts rained down, striking the lower districts. Fire lit up the streets. The sound of war returned to Valora. Elaris turned sharply. "Evacuate the civilians! All fighters to the defense lines." Lyra ran to carry the message, her small frame disappearing into the smoke. Elaris looked back at Ethan. "This is the end of their law," she said. "One way or another," he grinned faintly. "Then let's make history." The city burned and fought at once. Rebel ships rose from the hangars, small and swift, darting between the massive enemy vessels. Anti-air cannons roared. The sky itself seemed to split apart as beams of light collided. Ethan ran through the command hall, coordinating the defense. "Section 4 is gone," shouted a soldier. "We're losing the outer shields." "Pull back to the second line," Ethan ordered. "Draw them into the streets. Make them fight us up close." Elaris entered, her armor now glowing with embedded energy runes. She had activated the Crown of Valora, an ancient power reserved only for rulers in times of extinction. When she spoke, her voice carried through every communicator in the city. "Sons and daughters of Valora, the law that bound your mothers, your sisters, and your hearts has fallen. Stand with me now, not as servants but as free souls." The response was instant. The city roared. Ethan felt a chill down his spine as he heard her voice echo through the ruins. "You were born for this," he said under his breath. She looked at him. "No one is born to lead," she said quietly. "But someone must stand when others kneel." Hours passed in chaos. The rebels fought fiercely, but the Council's forces were endless. For every warship they destroyed, 2 more appeared. Elaris moved like lightning, her energy blade cutting through armored drones. Ethan covered her from above, firing rail pulses from the rooftops. Together, they moved like one, her precision, his recklessness, perfectly matched. When the enemy finally breached the palace walls, Alaris and Ethan met them head-on. Explosions shook the ground. Ethan was thrown into a pillar, pain searing through his body. He coughed, blood staining his lips. "Ethan!" Alaris called, slashing down the last attacker before running to him. He tried to stand, clutching his side. "I'm fine. You're bleeding," she said, kneeling beside him. He smiled weakly. "You should see the other guy." Tears glimmered in her silver eyes. "You shouldn't have followed me into this." "I promised I'd see this through," he whispered. "You once said the law made you strong because you had to obey, but breaking it made you human." She froze, his words cutting deeper than any blade. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder. The last of the council's dreadnoughts was descending, preparing a final strike that would wipe out the city entirely. Alaris rose to her feet, her voice shaking. "Then I will rewrite their law with my own hand." She walked to the center of the palace hall, activating the royal beacon. Her energy crown blazed, sending golden light across the city. "People of Valora," she spoke, her voice reaching every surviving soul. "The council says the elder owns all, even life itself. But I say this, and no one owns another. From this day forward, all bloodlines are equal. All hearts are free. The law of blood is dead." The beacon's energy flared, resonating through every communicator, every ship. The dreadnought's power core faltered. The system overloaded as her royal signal rewrote the command structure that once enslaved the people. Ethan shielded his eyes as the light grew blinding. "Alaris, stop, it'll kill you." She smiled softly, looking at him one last time. "Every queen must give something back to the world she breaks." Then the light consumed everything. Silence. When the smoke cleared, the dreadnoughts had fallen. The council's control network was gone. The sky was quiet again. Alaris lay at the center of the ruined hall, her crown dim, her pulse faint. Ethan crawled to her side, blood on his hands. "You did it," he whispered. "You ended it." Her lips curved in the smallest smile. "No, we ended it." Her hand touched his cheek, warm, trembling. "Promise me one thing, human, tell them." "We were not so different," he nodded, his voice breaking. "I will." Her eyes slowly closed. The light in her crown faded completely. Ethan sat there for a long time, holding her hand, as the first peaceful wind in centuries swept through the shattered palace. Outside, the people of Valora gathered, staring at the rising sun. In the dawn light, a new law was born, not written in stone, not enforced by power, but carried in the hearts of a free people. The human who had fallen from the stars and the queen who defied her own bloodline had changed a civilization forever. The world that woke after the war was not the same. Where once the towers of Valora had glowed in cold silver light, now green vines crept over them, and the streets echoed not with orders, but with laughter. The twin suns shone on a planet reborn. It had been 3 years since the fall of the law. Children no longer learned who was elder or younger. They learned to say equal. The old temples of obedience had become schools. The council's banners had been burned, and in their place rose one single symbol, a circle divided by light and shadow, joined at the center, the symbol of unity. The mark of Alaris Ethan Cole stood at the edge of the new Capitol Square, watching the morning light wash over the memorial. At the center stood a statue, not of power, but of mercy. A human catching a falling alien girl mid-air. Her eyes wide, his arms outstretched. The inscription read, "One act of compassion rewrote the stars." He stood there quietly, the wind tugging at his coat. His once bandaged arm was now replaced with a prosthetic of silver alloy, a gift from Valoran engineers, forged from the same material as their ancient crowns. He still remembered the day Alaris fell, her light fading in his arms. Some nights he could still hear her last words echoing through the quiet. "Tell them, we were not so different." And so he did. "Ambassador Cole," a voice called softly behind him. He turned. Lyra stood there, dressed in the royal robes of the High Envoy of Valora. No crown, no jewels, only a crystal pendant shaped like a tear. She smiled faintly. "Still visiting her every morning?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Old habits die hard. She'd like that," Lyra said. "You never stopped remembering," he smiled back.
"Neither did you."
You made everything she wanted real? Lyra's gaze softened. She believed in peace. I just try to continue, her voice. She looked up at the statue, her sister immortalized in the arms of the man who had defied a galaxy's law. It feels strange, she said quietly. When I was younger, I thought heroes were gods. But now I know they're just people who refuse to walk away. Ethan chuckled. That's the nicest way anyone's ever called me stubborn. They both laughed softly, the kind of laughter that comes after long storms. As they walked through the city, life surrounded them. Alien children ran through the markets. Human traders from the outer colonies haggled with Valoran smiths. Ships from dozens of worlds landed in the New Alliance port carrying goods, stories, and hope. Ethan looked up as a group of human engineers adjusted a massive energy dome above the city. Never thought I'd see humans and Valorans building together. Lyra smiled. When you tear down old walls, it's easy to see how much light there is on the other side. He nodded slowly. You sound just like her. Lyra's expression grew wistful. Sometimes I still talk to her. When the stars are quiet, I tell her what we've done. I tell her about you. Ethan blinked. About me? She would want to know you stayed. You could have gone home, Ethan. He looked out at the horizon, the twin suns rising over the reborn world. Home changes, he said. Sometimes you find it where you least expect it. That evening, as the suns began to set, the city gathered in the plaza for the Day of Rebirth, a celebration that marked the anniversary of the end of the Law of Blood. Lanterns of every color floated into the air, carrying messages to those who had fallen. The sky shimmered like a sea of stars. Lyra took the stage, her voice calm but strong. 3 years ago, this world was silent, she said. Now it sings. We owe that song to 2 souls, one born of Vylora, one born of Earth, who showed us that compassion is stronger than law, and love stronger than fear. The crowd bowed their heads. Ethan stood at the back unnoticed, content to simply listen. But as Lyra spoke his name, the people turned, eyes shining. Ethan Cole, she said. The man who showed us that courage can come from kindness. The crowd began to chant his name, softly at first, then louder, echoing across the city like the heartbeat of a living world. Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. He wasn't a ruler or a warrior anymore, just a man who had done what felt right, once. And somehow that had been enough. Later that night, after the celebrations faded, Ethan returned to the quiet balcony overlooking the city. The stars shimmered like silver fireflies. He sat down, setting a small metal box beside him. Inside was the broken crown of Alaris, the last piece he had kept. Its light was dim, but still alive. He whispered into the wind. You'd like this world, Alaris. They finally learned how to live without fear. A soft breeze brushed his cheek, warm and gentle, almost like a hand. He smiled faintly. Guess you're still watching, he said. Typical Queen. Can't stop checking if things are in order. The crown pulsed once, just faintly. He laughed quietly. I'll take that as a yes. In the far distance beyond the edge of the galaxy, a new transmission pulsed through the stars. The Treaty of Vylora, signed by 50 worlds. Its opening line would be remembered for generations. No world shall build law upon ownership of life. No soul shall be bound by birth. Compassion is our strength. Unity our legacy. It was the first law in galactic history born not from power, but from understanding. And somewhere in that endless starlight, the legends would continue to grow. They would say a human fell from the sky and caught a child. The child became a queen. The queen freed her people, and together they rewrote the stars. Ethan Cole would never call himself a hero, but the galaxies would remember him, not for his strength but for the one thing that changed everything, human kindness.